Lydia said, like she said, she's a brand designer, brand marketing designer, Lydia Varesco Design, empowering education-focused organizations to make a change. And she blogs about branding and marketing and leads workshops for nonprofits and small businesses. I first met her through the Association of Consultants to Nonprofits, which we're both on the board of, but she also founded an online community for moms called Biz Mama. So I'm going to put all those links in the chat. I know I wish it would link them and it won't, but they'll be in the chat anyway. So Lydia, take it away.
So I think Randy may have shared with you a link to the blog series that kicked this off. It's called The A to Z of Social Media Marketing. And basically, every year I do this daily blog challenge, which happens in April. It's organized by a group. They're called A to Z of Blogging Challenge, something to that effect. So every year I've been doing this challenge. And I started out, I did one that was A to Z of design. I did one that was A to Z of being a mom in business. As Randy mentioned, I've got kids and I have a business. So that's kind of part of my life. So this year I did A to Z of social media marketing. Full disclosure, I started it last year and I never finished it. So it took me 2 years to do it. But it's basically a daily blog series, and I kind of do a bit of an overview on a topic from A to Z each day. So today I picked 3 letters that we'll talk about, 3 words. And if there's other things, if you looked at the blog series and something came to mind that you want to talk about or just anything, we'll talk about it. And I think, Randy, if you can keep an eye on the chat, or you can just unmute people because I don't think I have my chat window handy.
Sure. So I've got
Okay.
chat. So if you have questions, you can
Perfect.
put them. Yeah, you can put them in there.
Okay, great. So we'll start with B. B is for branding. I actually did a branding 101 workshop this morning in Des Plaines. I know that we have someone here from Des Plaines for the Des Plaines Chamber. And branding is just one of the things I absolutely love. I've been doing branding in the print world for a really long time. I started my business in 2000 and have been designing well before then as well. So now that we are in pretty much 100% virtual world, now I'm talking to people about, how to make sure your branding is strategic and targeted for all the places where people will be finding you virtually. So that might be your website, your social media, your email marketing, all of those virtual places. People will come across your brand. And that might be how they discover you. They might just be browsing through Facebook and see an ad that you posted, or they might find you on Instagram. So definitely something important to keep in mind, especially nowadays. So branding for social media is, very similar to how I talk about branding for any other purposes, for print, for digital. I focus on the who, what, and why. So in this case, in social media, we would talk about who is your audience, what do they want to learn, read, be inspired by, and why are you the perfect person or organization to provide them this information. So that's kind of the key. The why is really the key in all branding, in my opinion. That's why you do what you do. That's what makes you different. And that's what will bring people back when they visit your webpage or they check you out on Instagram. They'll come back if your why is strong and if it resonates with them. So as I kind of touched upon, your social media branding should be strategic. So you want to make sure that it's based on goals that you've established. It should be targeted. You want to make sure that it is written, the messaging is for a specific audience that you have also determined, and you want it to be consistent. So you want your audience to come to expect it. And this is really important in social media because this is how you get people to come back. You do, that daily series, you do, motivational Mondays or marketing Mondays, or you do interviews, on the first Wednesday of a month. You have a consistent schedule and you have a reason for people to come back, to follow you, to expect that weekly email that you send. So some of the best practices, and I'm going to let's see, you know what? Let me try to find the chat because I do have some, there we go. I do have some resources that I would love to share as I go along. And I don't know if I shared all of them with Randy, so I'm going to drop them in the chat as I go along. So some of the best practices to keep in mind when you are doing your social media branding is to make sure that you, just with, standard branding for your business or organization, that you do an audit from time to time. So you take a look at that who, what, and why. And it's good to, have a piece of paper. I had a worksheet for my audience this morning to jot down their who, what, and why. And just to kind of make sure, is everything still the same? Is everything still on track? And now especially is a great time to do that because right now your audience may be changing. The people who are coming to you may be changing. Their needs are definitely changing. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that and that you're adjusting your branding accordingly. So I will drop in the chat first. I have a social media branding checklist. So I'll drop that in the chat. And that's just a worksheet you can kind of go through and you can see like it'll, kind of a series of yes, no questions that will help you to determine if your branding is consistent, if your messaging is consistent, if you're using those calls to action that you should be using, if you're speaking to your audience. So you can take a peek at that when you have a moment. And then I
see that
also,
having
oops,
appeared in the chat. Did you?
oh,
No.
oops, oh shoot, I sent it. I sent it just to Judy because she had sent me
Oh,
a
okay.
message. Sorry about that.
There we
Judy's like, oh, yay, I got it.
go.
Okay, there, it should be in there now. Okay, great. So going back to, we started talking about consistency. And one of the ways that you can make sure that you are consistent and actually strategic and targeted, as we talked about, is by having a social media brand guide. This is something, again, that I really, really pushed with my clients. Just a brand guide in general, I think is key for every organization, whether it's a 2-page PDF or a 50-page PDF. You need to have a place where you keep all of the important parts of your brand, from visual to messaging. So with social media, same thing applies. And that could be part of your standard brand guide, or you can just do a standalone, which has that who, what, and why as it applies to your social media audience. And what I like to do as well with my social media brand guides is to have examples of, say, those themes that we talked about. If you want to do like a daily theme on your Instagram, or if there's types of posts you'll do. So say you'll do like, a photo post, you'll do an infographic post, all of that, you can put that in your brand guide. And then as you're developing your social media, you have a guide. And if you're working with partners, you can share this guide so that if you have a writer, if you have someone who's doing scheduling for you, everybody's on the same page. And I will drop in the chat now. I have a blog about, social media brand guides. And I'll put that in the chat now. So before I go on, any questions, comments that we can talk about social media branding, our B from the A to Z?
If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and throw them out or put it in the chat box. Or if you click through that full A to Z, and if you have a question about any of the letters that we don't cover, or you want to stump Lydia by throwing out a letter and hoping she remembers it off the top of her head, feel free to do that too. But it looks like I don't have any questions just yet.
Okay, perfect. So let's go to our next letter, which is D. D is for data. And data has become one of my favorite things, which is crazy because I'm a visual person, I'm a designer. But over the years, I've really grown to love looking at analytics, looking at data, asking my clients for data, and really just, being informed by it and creating solutions based on data. So in social media, data is completely crucial. And that's one thing that, if you're not looking at your analytics, you're not tracking, you're not seeing what's working, then you could be wasting your time. You could just be spending hours and hours putting things out there, and not learning from it, and not realizing if your efforts are working. So I like to tell people, I know that data can be very overwhelming, even for myself with the clients that I work with. It's time consuming, and but it's very, very worthwhile. So I like to tell people, at the very least, try to determine the most important metrics. So the ones that are relating to your goals. And we'll talk a little bit more about goals as we move along. But once you determine your goals, then you can determine which analytics to track. So for most people, they're looking at, I want to gain more followers, or have more people, engaging with my organization on Facebook, on Instagram. So then you want to look at those engagement analytics. So that would be the likes, the comments, shares, clicks. For other organizations, awareness is the goal, just getting more awareness of your organization, more people knowing about you and who you are. And in that case, then you would be looking at impressions and reach. And there's so many more things you can look at, but I feel like if you can at least start with the basics and keep an eye on those and kind of see how they're changing month to month, it really helps. It helps to inform your campaigns, helps you to decide what to do for the future. So it also, we kind of touched upon it, but it will show you which of those campaigns are successful. So like, hey, I did this National Volunteer Week campaign this year, and it was great. We had a lot of engagement. We had a lot of comments. So yeah, for sure, we're putting that on our content calendar for next year. So that, I think, is really great, and it helps you to plan your marketing calendar, your content calendar for the following months and also for the next year. It's good to keep those, keep spreadsheets, or if you have an app, save those files, and then you can always go back and look at them if you're running yearly campaigns.
We do have a question that
Yes.
Judy asked. So are there differences in quality data that you can get for free versus paid? How much should we be paying to?
Yes. Well, and I think, I don't know if I would say quality, I would say quantity is the difference. I know that with most of the apps, like if you're using, say, like a free version of Buffer or Hootsuite, you can get the basics. You can see, oh, this post performed well. But if you get the paid version of Buffer, or the more expensive, the upgrade to Hootsuite, you can see all of those analytics that you really want to see, as far as the engagement and the awareness, like those especially. That's the main thing, is that you get more quantity, so you can kind of scratch the surface. I think that's a great way to scratch the surface, and that's kind of what I've done. But then I've realized, okay, that was step one. Step two is investing in a paid app. So whether it's upgrading my current app, like I use Buffer, upgrading it to their plan, their Analyze plan, which gives me all the analytics, or getting like a standalone. There are standalone apps that you can also get that show you multiple channels at a glance. And again, it's maybe $9.99 a month, but it's worth it, because you can go beyond just scratching the surface of, oh, this post got this many likes. And we'll talk about that a little bit too as I keep going on, because there are, like we talked about, there's all of the social scheduling apps have that kind of free version, and then you upgrade, you get this level of analytics, and then you upgrade to the next one and you get the next level of analytics. Facebook has its own analytics that are built in, as does Instagram. But again, you may not see as much, depending on how driven your organization is by social media. You may need to at least do a test run of one of the paid analytics apps, or upgrade your current scheduling app to see, is it worth it? Because, for some organizations, getting the basics may be enough. But it's really one of those things where you almost need to do the test run. Like, I've done a lot of trials of the apps to see, does it give me more than what I'm seeing just in my Instagram insights? So we talked about that. We talked about standalone apps where you see multiple channels. There's one called Scythe. There's one called Octoboard. There's a spreadsheet. I know with some of my clients, we're using a Google Sheet and we're tracking, just those engagement and awareness analytics that are important to our organization. So if you are in a lower budget, that's an option. I have a template for that. And there are some other reporting tools, and I will drop this link. This links to a whole bunch of social media tools and includes some of these analytics reporting tools that we've talked about. Is anybody using any paid analytics right now with your social media channels? Later, I see Aaron just mentioned he's using Later and bought a lifetime license to Content Studio. I have used Later just a little bit. I use Buffer right now, and I upgraded my plan to the Buffer Analyze, which gives you the full analytics. It's expensive. It's $50 a month. So I'm testing it out to see, is it worth it? And that's one of the things to keep in mind. So is $50 a month worth it to you to get those insights? Are those insights going to, pay for themselves, basically? Content Studio, I haven't heard of. I'll have to look into that one. Is that a social scheduler or is that an analytics app, Aaron?
Both.
It's both. Okay, cool. All right, I'll have to look into that.
What we're hearing is that everybody should mark down to, in about a couple of months, check in with Lydia and check in with Aaron and see how these are going before you spend any money.
Let's do that. That's a great plan, because it is one of those things where, you could get by with a spreadsheet or just with your built-in analytics in your app, instead of paying that $50 a month. So, but you won't know until you try. So at least give it a try.
We are running short on time, and I know you want to get to a third letter, right?
Yes. Yep.
And if anybody else has any questions too, I want to make sure we get to those.
Yep. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to blow through strategy as quickly as I can. So S is for strategy, and we've actually touched upon some of these already, so I think we can get through it pretty quickly. But like all of your other marketing tactics, social media isn't going to work unless you have a strategy. So you want to, what I suggest is starting out with your organization's mission, vision, strategic plan, and overall goals. So just have all that handy, print it out, have it all handy, and then start by creating a social media mission statement. So this is another worksheet I'm going to drop in the chat here. So your social media mission statement, kind of similar to your typical mission statement, it's going to be that who, what, and why that we talked about, but you'll be documenting it. You'll be, writing it down so that you have a reference. And from those two components, so looking at your overall organization, strategic plan and goals, and then looking at your social media mission statement, then you can develop your social media goals and your KPIs. And then you can create, hopefully, a lovely documented strategy that outlines everything, and you can share that with your team. And that's something that I have been doing with my clients as well, is creating that documented strategy that outlines everything, starting with their goals, their mission statement, weekly themes that we're considering, messaging, the social media outlets that they plan to use, the audience for each of those outlets. And once you have it, it takes some time, but I'm a visual person, and I just feel like if you see it in front of you, it makes it so much easier when you're creating both your content calendar as well as just a piece of content to put it out there. You have a plan. So a couple of best practices real quick. Keep in mind that goals, audience, and messaging will be slightly different in each channel, which is why it's good to kind of figure out that who, what, and why in advance. And then your strategy isn't set in stone, so you definitely want to review it at least quarterly. And as you're running those analytics reports, you want to go in and maybe make adjustments to your strategy, maybe make adjustments to your content calendar accordingly based on what you're observing. So 2:30, I'm done. Any questions?
Does anybody else have any other questions? I will, thank you so much for, well, for all the information, but also for all these links. And if everybody's cool with it, I'll send a follow-up email with this information, with all of these links. And it'll have Lydia's information if you want to get in touch with either of us too. So does anybody have any final questions before we all get back to our days? Lydia, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. But
You're
Lydia, thank you
welcome.
for all the great tips. And now you left us 23 other letters to go and research. So
Yes.
everybody go check out the rest of the list.
Please do. There's some good ones because, you know, Y is always a tricky one. X is always a tricky one.
Yeah.
So you can see what I picked for each of those.
Yeah. I loved T, and I went, which was trust.
Yes.
I'm gonna dig into that post on your blog about how you make that convey in social media design. So
yes, it's the old people need to know you, like you, and trust you. I forgot who said that, but some marketer.
you did. We'll attribute
Yes,
it.
attribute it to Lidia Varesco Racoma from now.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thanks, everybody.